Good morning. Welcome this morning on a beautiful, beautiful fall morning. A couple of weeks ago, I decided that I wasn't going to wait until the end of October to shut down our cottage up in Minocqua. So I did that 2 weekends ago, and it was 32 degrees and snowing. And the last 2 weekends have been absolutely gorgeous, and including yesterday out at the school site. The trunk or treat was absolutely phenomenal. We went out there. I just discovered that I think the rush hour there was about 10:45 a.m., and it was unbelievable. It was just, you got goosebumps. Walked into the parking lot, drove into the parking lot, and there were cars parked on the way up by the middle or the elementary school area. I don't know, I heard about 1,003 had visited for the trunk or treat yesterday. So pretty remarkable for that. So what a blessing to be able to experience that as well. And the weather was absolutely phenomenal too. Before we get started on the open forum, I did want to just take a moment to remind everybody it's Pastor Appreciation Month this month, and wanted to take the opportunity to recognize and thank our pastors for all of the service that they have provided us here at St. Matthew's. If we think back on the past couple of years especially, from scrambling to put together online services, COVID services, back and forth services, and that was just something that was very visible to all of us. But what they do for us, for our ministry here at St. Matthew's, is absolutely remarkable. So a thank you to our pastors, and also all of the pastors that are here today, whether serving us here or in the congregations that you've served, whether you've helped us out with some substitute preaching or some substitute help, or filling in on some of the special services. Thank you all very much for your service. So Pastor Hilmer, if you would please open us with a prayer.
Just on that trunk or treat, the head counters, there was clickers at one end and there were tally takers at the other driveway. That number was 966. And then Tom added up all the heads of the helpers and workers, and that's how it came to 1,003. So it wasn't kidding on that number. That's pretty amazing. So what a blessing. So bow our heads in prayer. Heavenly Father, you open your hand and satisfy the desires of every living thing. Today is certainly an example of that again. You have fed our faith and nourished us through word and sacrament, and you bless us in so many ways by sending us your Holy Spirit. As we now see the tremendous work before us, we give you thanks to see the power of your hand at work. Energized by your Spirit, may we contribute and continue to support the gospel ministry here so that your name may be faithfully proclaimed throughout our community, to the people that live here, so that your name may be upheld and glorified by all. In Jesus, our Savior's name, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. So this morning, we'll be going through a little bit of an update on where we are on our single-site ministry plan. I'll share the first couple of pieces, a little bit of background at first. For some of you, it may be very familiar. Others, it might be the first time you're seeing some of the background on where we have been and where we are headed. Then Mark Klug will give us an update on the construction progress out on Brown Street. And Ralph Schmidt, our chairman of our Board of Elders, he will be here this morning to talk to us a little bit about what's going to be our interim worship plans during the period of time between when we will be exiting the Wisconsin Avenue facility in the February timeframe and when we take occupancy in next summer. And then an update on where we are from a financial standpoint from our Forward campaign. So again, just a little bit of a refresher. Less than 18 months ago, I think it all started in earnest, that the congregation had made the decision that it's time to continue to move forward with the sanctuary portion and the expansion. And that quickly became, in addition to the sanctuary, the school expansion because of the tremendous blessings of growth that we've seen. We are still on target for that summer-fall opening and occupancy out in the sanctuary. A little refresher on the scope and the review. We had the sanctuary part of the project. We also had completed, when we first did phase one with the school, there was a part of the original plan that we had deferred until a future stage, which is now, which included the commons and the cafeteria expansion, area for our music and band space, and then also some Sunday school and extra classroom space that we knew we needed. And again, as I mentioned, over the past couple of years, our school growth has nearly doubled since, I believe it was the 2017-2018 school year. And so adding 6 additional classrooms. A couple of those are needed for immediate use already next school year, and then 4 additional ones that we would be seeing as we continue to grow in the future. And from a financing standpoint, there are 2 vehicles that we have used for the financing of the both parts of the project. The school facility portion of it was eligible for bonding, so we were able to do that. And the advantage of that was a significantly lower rate and also the 7-year term on that. And then a conventional commercial loan for the sanctuary portion of the project at about $6.8 million. And keep that number in mind later on towards the end of our discussions this morning, that I think that number will come up again for the sanctuary portion of the project. So where are we today? If you recall, a few months ago, we had gotten together and we talked about there was a couple of interested parties. One in particular party was interested in purchasing the Wisconsin Avenue site, the entire facility and the grounds here. We did complete the closing of that on September 30th. And Bridge Church, and if you've gone through Oconomowoc Sunday mornings by the community center, they've been setting up and taking down. They've been worshiping in the community center for the past couple of years, I believe. They are affiliated with the Assemblies of God. They do have a parent congregation in the Waukesha area. It's a fairly significant size congregation, and this is more of a startup congregation for them. But they stepped forward very early on and were very interested in the facility to help expand their congregation in the area. We did close on that. It was $2.5 million that we did receive from Bridge Church for the purchase of this facility and the grounds here. Very, very blessed and very pleased to say that there were no issues. They did a lot of due diligence. They had several different inspections on the facilities, and there were no issues when it came upon closing, including the fact that, I think, Ralph, you reminded me yesterday, was it June 10th where we had a hailstorm in Oconomowoc? I think it was June 25th or something like that they had an inspection scheduled for the facilities. So including even hail damage, there was not substantial damage. We had a roofer come in. We were concerned a little bit about the roof, and they inspected it and told us they did not think that it was substantial damage at all to the roof. And they also had an independent company come in and assess it as well. So that all went very, very well as we went through closing with no concerns or issues. In addition to that, surrounding properties, you could imagine over nearly 100 years of property transactions that have gone on between this site and some of the adjacent properties just slightly north of us along the shoreline and also to our east. A lot of questions over the years on exactly where is that lot line. And there were probably a half a dozen or more, and Ron shared a little bit of time investigating some of this stuff, a little bit, I say in air quotes because it was a little more than a little. And we found that there were probably a half a dozen different versions of the truth. All of them really pretty well matched up, but this gave us the opportunity, and in fact, the title company required that we had to have all of those neighbors together and say, yes, we all agree that these are the known property lines, and all of those documents are all together in one package, and that's filed with the sale of this property. So that's all been cleaned up, and that's all been straightened out very, very nicely. And the neighbors, we had an opportunity to meet with those neighbors, and I would say the 2 that I personally met with, they were very pleased to hear, not that we were leaving, but that another church was coming in to the area because they had heard that we would probably sell the property, and they had visions of, oh my goodness, is it going to be a condo complex? Is the city going to convert it into a boat launch? I mean, we heard all kinds of stories from what they thought might have been happening, so they were very pleased. They said, the school that has been in here for the past year and a half, and these are the neighbors that are absolutely right on top of our property, they said it's been a pleasure. No issues, no concerns with that. So they were very pleased to hear that from a neighbor standpoint. So now, as of October 1st, we are now leasing back the facility here at between now and the end of February. They had wanted to try to be in as soon as possible. We wanted to try to extend that as long as possible, obviously. And we were able to agree with them that we would be able to get through the holidays, the Christmas holiday season, and then spend another month and a half or so kind of wrapping things up here for ourselves as we would then move into our interim plans, as Ralph will share with us a little bit later on. And so that lease that we had agreement with LCCA, as of October 1st, Bridge Church now has assumed that lease as well. So that relationship will just continue with LCCA leasing the school space, and Bridge Church will take over the sanctuary and fellowship space at the end of February. So that's kind of where we are right now. And again, I was talking to Andy Andrus earlier this morning, and talked about over the years our plans and what we thought might have been the timing. And I know I've said this before, and I say this very sincerely. Sometimes it's just our job to kind of step away out of the way and watch God's plan come to fruition. And we can help out in many, many ways. And the blessings that we have seen here at St. Matthew's, whether it be from financial or whether it be another church coming in and saying, hey, we're really interested in the property, it's really pretty awesome and humbling to step back and watch how all of that has come into place. So God's plans, and we're just here to help facilitate that. So at this point, I'm going to pass it on to Mark Klug, and he'll give us an update on the construction progress.
Thanks, Bob. Good morning, everyone. What a blessing. In Pastor's sermon this morning, Reformation Weekend is a time when we give thanks to the Lord of the church. And that's who we are. We are the church body. And it is just such a blessing to have an incredible facility for us to work and function out of. Obviously there are some countries where even if you build or plan to build a church, you may not even be able to do that. You may not even be sent to a correction camp. So what a blessing that we have to actually see a good portion of this already come to fruition. Over half of it is being done. So we broke ground on June 5th and began construction on June 7th. So the groundbreaking and construction build was a little bit later than what we had hoped for, but we put a lot of time and effort. We went through a lot of meeting time, a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of planning to put all this into place so that we didn't have to consider all these different contingency options and alteration of plans, and that gets to be really an issue. So it may have started a little bit later than we hoped for, but with that, we have a potential for that classroom occupancy actually to be looked at February 28th of 23. So some of the trusses and other things weren't ready, and frames were not ready for the church sanctuary. So they really got on to the classroom build and really started on that and continued that project. And so it'll definitely be ready for the start of the school year. And then that's 2 classrooms and then 4 additionally substantially shelled, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And the target date for the sanctuary occupancy is August 18th of 2023. So we'll have a new church to worship out of, hopefully at that date. Potential challenges ahead. So window and door lead times are a concern potentially for that February 28th, 2023 classroom occupancy. So we're looking at 2 classrooms to be done as planned, and then 4 classrooms to be considered and substantially shelled. Part of that work was a consideration of what does substantially shelled mean? Well, substantially shelled means obviously that we have a foundation and a concrete floor, a roof, and walls, electrical, but not heating and cooling although the heating and cooling was a significant part of a concern with our, or a opportunity with our heating and HVAC person, where they said there are changes and regulations coming up where I have the units now. If you purchase them now, you're probably going to be at a much better cost control versus what's happening in the future. And so we did make that decision with our contingencies and room to purchase the AC and the heating and heating units so that we could have heating and cooling in the shelled areas. So what remains is mostly flooring, hardware, doors. We will have windows, but there might be some lead times on all of those that we'd have to consider, and we hope and pray for that they will actually be in by February. We hope to have offices ready in those 2 classrooms for our pastors and staff. And that would be a real blessing since we wouldn't have to move them to another location. If we have to move them to another location, we'd have to consider a separate lease, potentially, internet, AV, setup, office furniture, move and relocation. And so there's a cost, logistics issue, and we'd have to consider that. This actually works out really well. We have staff and pastors on campus already in play, and considering that type of benefit, we really wanted to have that option. So we're hoping and praying that the lead times of the doors, especially the exterior doors, will be in on time. If not, we have some alternative plans for some temporary doors that we can still do that to gain occupancy, because you have to have a functioning space to city code to actually get into a building for occupancy. So. And then a roof on the sanctuary by the end of 2022. With that, we still have volunteer opportunities for especially assist in winter conditions. We're already hitting the 30s, and so we might have snow in the next few weeks even. So we need people out to help us remove snow, and then throughout the winter until roofs are on and everything is complete and still outside, we might need some snow removal. Casework installation, more so in the spring, landscaping obviously in the summer, and then final cleanup. That will probably be the majority of the volunteer needs on a lot of cleanup. So window washing and mopping and vacuuming and cleaning overall, dusting and things like that. So on our website, under events, is the construction opportunities. We have about 12 people signed up. I'd like 50 signed up if possible. We'd really like to have enough people to really help us, especially with snow removal, if we get inclement weather. The more that we get the snow removed, the more that we actually get things cleaned up, the more that we can actually stay on target, and that timeline is critical for us. We also celebrate a family day, a construction day coming up. We were looking at maybe January and February when the roofs are on, the walls are somewhat up, and then as we did with the gymnasium and the school, we had a great family day with all the kids, and we had activities, and they could actually work with the construction workers. You could see the building, have a lunch, and really have a great time actually experiencing the new facility and the new classrooms, the new sanctuary. So that would be a great time to really get the word out and get people out there and get them all enthused about the new construction. Overall, costs are on target. We do have some overages on pews and sanctuary. Some costs have gone up, including lumber, for this type of work. And so we wanted to make the right decisions. We looked at polished concrete for the commons and other areas, but we wanted the right type of flooring for the sanctuary. And so there were some cost additions for that. But still, we are in the right area for contingencies and below budget. And so we thank God for that work. And we still have, again, saving opportunities remain. Last time, we had over $300,000 of opportunities saved with the amount of labor and construction help that we had. So we could even do more with that this year if we continue to build on volunteer opportunities. Back to the 4 classrooms that are shelled. At this point, the cost difference remaining is about $250,000 to finish those classrooms. There is some rationale to consider that now versus later. The construction crew is on site. mobilization would not need to be performed, and we know what costs are now more so than maybe in the future. There's strong rationale to consider that also for the pastors and the staff to have a place to move into as the classrooms are being prepped for class in the beginning of the school year is an area of need for where they would go to. And if the classrooms aren't done sufficiently, then we would not get temporary occupancy for those additional 4 classrooms. Again, there's a savings of also lease and other logistics there to really strongly consider that type of spend. So we can talk a little bit more about that in question and answer. Just a reflection on the groundbreaking. We had an awesome groundbreaking with a lot of prayers and a lot of people really reflecting on the great work being done to put this all together. And then in July, excavation and footings happened. Substantial work there. What was great is that the soil conditions were favorable. We didn't have any problems with water tables or any issues there. And good weather, very little rain that affected the footings and the foundation and the pour. And so we were very blessed to have that in August and September. More foundations and classrooms under date. The classroom itself, again, was expedited. And so that actually has a shingled roof on it today. And you can also see in the outline that Catalyst and the work being done is really quite contained so that we can still have a full functioning school and childcare with a lot of activity during the day, and then working that activity well so that we don't have any accidents. Again, this classroom is area is actually shingled and has a roof on it, and again, we look forward to having that completed hopefully by February. And then these are the foundation areas for the sanctuary itself, and you can see where the truck is actually the sanctuary and the commons. And the office areas are already poured footings at that time. October, we actually had steel framing. And so you can see the bell tower on the right there actually being formed, as well as the sanctuary girders up, and the commons and the office areas actually formed with roofing on it. Bob, does this actually get into the video now? Here we go. So now we have the latest drone footage as of last week, I believe. And you can see from the elevations here some significant work being done. And some significant work on the commons area. Hopefully none of you get dizzy by this because it's actually great footage. And you can see the classrooms there again with the shingled roof and the work being done and the framing being done for the sanctuary area. With all that work, you'd think there'd be more than 1 or 2 workers running around. They're on break, yeah. So it's really going to be neat. We're actually working on the cross for the bell tower as well, with some options for stainless steel or being painted. I think we're leaning more toward stainless steel so that it would be resistant of a lot of weather conditions. And a real thanks to Shar and her interior group. There has been a ton of work in the interiors that continues to be done. Sound and AV is continuing to be put into play so that we'll have a great acoustic environment and AV and technical equipment that will also be a part of this. There's the bell tower in more of a fashion. You can see from the height of it and from the strength of that, we can actually have a real beacon, and that cross can shine throughout the entire community. Good shot there from the activity on the highway. Coming right up to the main portion. All right. And now the tough part, Ralph's going to talk about the next phase of worshiping, as this church is no longer ours, and we have a new church to go to at some point.
Good morning. Wow. Is this exciting or what? If you haven't been by the Brown Street campus in a while, you need to go out there. It is amazing, awesome. I don't know how else to explain it, but it's happening. I am here today to talk to you about our interim worship plans, that being the period of time from the end of January when we leave this building until whenever the new building is completed. Please remember these are temporary issues, not long-term. We do have one recommendation that we'll be bringing to the congregation before or at the November congregational meeting, but we'll talk about that in a few moments. Okay, the last service is here. The last Monday service will be December 19th. That's the Monday before Christmas. And the last Sunday services we will have here will be January 29th. Now that is going to be not a normal service. There will be a lot of ceremony to that service. Pastor Hilmer has got some plans for us, but there is actually a service that the Synod has for the closing of a church. And we will exit with communion ware, etc., out into the parking lot and lock the doors behind us. So be here for that, please. Okay, temporary shift to a Saturday night, late afternoon, and 2 Sunday services during the time that we're meeting in the gymnasium at the Brown Street campus. That will start Saturday the 4th and then Sunday the 5th. There will be no Monday or Thursday services during this time. Thursday services plan to resume in the new sanctuary, and it is the recommendation that we'll be bringing to the congregation that Monday services are discontinued as of December 19th. We will not have Monday services in the new sanctuary. There are a number of reasons for that. We do have a night service at this point in time on Thursday. And when we move into the gymnasium, that's not going to lend itself to our setting up another nighttime service. We also will be moving into a bigger sanctuary and should have no problem with space. We also think it will give a bit of a break to our pastors with their prep time, also reducing the load of the organists, ushers, and volunteers. We think that we can handle the needs of the congregation at this point with 3 services. So we would have Thursday and two on Sunday. This here is a picture of what the seating might look like in the gymnasium. This also gives us a kind of a view of what it will look like when we're in our new sanctuary with the seating pattern that's there. If you look at this, it's got 8 rows of seating, I believe. If you look at this sanctuary here, I believe there's 26 rows. So I think we're going to feel a little bit more intimacy in the new seating arrangement. The pastors will be preaching from the gym floor, not from the stage. This will allow a little bit of closeness and also help with the communion. That's 346 chairs set up there. We certainly can set up more or less, whatever, but you can see the baptismal font right in the middle, the table behind, and the lectern there. By the time we are in there in January, early February, we hope to have some acoustical panels on the walls of the gym too, which will help with being able to hear better in there. But just the fact that we only have 8 rows of seating will keep us closer. Okay, how do we do this? We're going to make use of our 7th and 8th graders. Friday afternoons, the 7th and 8th grade students will be setting this up for our for Saturday night service and Sunday morning. Takedown, we need volunteers. We'll have ushers that will kind of lead the takedown procedure, but we will ask people to sign up for the ushers to help the ushers take the chairs down and put them away till the students set them up again for us the next week. Kind of a review here. This is the pastor's office's business administrator, church secretary, midweek Bible study space. Obviously, we want to have Plan A work for us so that we can do it on campus there. But if that doesn't happen, we're going to have to go to a second plan, that being the short-term lease someplace off premises. So I think that's all I've got. You can have it back, Bob. Question and answers.
And just as kind of wrap up a little bit before we get to any of the Q&A, where are we from a financial blessing standpoint? As I mentioned earlier, and as you've seen maybe in the Narthex area, the congregation's response has been absolutely remarkable. We did have the initial fund drive where we've had over $3.2 million in commitments, and after 1 year of that, just about 40% of those commitments have already been received. And over and above those commitments, there's been an additional $310,000 over and above committed gifts given to the project thus far, for a total of $1.6 million to date. So again, we have been remarkably blessed through God's grace here. And also we continue to see commitments. We also continue to see gifts over and above those commitments. You'll see this is kind of our running total of where we are. Several different elements as we talked about the financial plan, starting with we did have some cash in our accounts for the new church building fund, the lease revenue, the sale of the Wisconsin Avenue facility, and then our member gifts and commitments. Interesting in this kind of this lower section here between what we had first anticipated from a maximum sale of about $2 million for the property and about $750,000 over the 3-year lease period. Granted, we only had 1 year of lease, came to about $220,000, but we also received $2.5 million. So that total of about $2.7 million came to fruition. A little bit different way, but that certainly did come out. And again, just kind of wrapping that up on what it looks like from a total picture standpoint. Our 3-year commitments of $3.29 million, our non-commitment gifts to date of $310,000, the sale of the Wisconsin Avenue property, the lease revenue, all totaling, and also the new church building funds at just under $6.8 million. And if you recall, when I first talked about the sanctuary part of the project is about $6.8 million. And to think that at the end of 2025, as our 3-year commitments are fulfilled and our continued giving and the blessings continue, we would have zero debt on that $6.8 million portion of the sanctuary. So again, thank you to our members, and we certainly thank God for the blessings that He has bestowed on us here at St. Matthew's. We'll still continue to have the additional debt with respect to the school portion of it, if we wanted to look at it that way, but pretty amazing to look back and see, again, how we have truly been blessed. And this is, again, we saw some of the still photos of the progress, and we've shared this video before. This is the fly-through rendering of what the finished sanctuary area will look like. This had music before, didn't it? So the entryway through the gathering space, this is looking into the chapel area, the smaller chapel area. That might have moved, the fireplace might have moved in the plans. And then coming out of that chapel area into the larger gathering space where there'll be like a coffee bar and a little kitchenette in there, and then entering into the sanctuary space. The stained glass window in the back above the altar area. The sun will set pretty soon, so it is an afternoon service, I think. Yeah, it must have been this time of year. The sun went away in a matter of 3 minutes, just like this time of year. So again, it's certainly exciting and humbling at the same time for us to see how all of those plans that through the decades that we have seen planning from the original construction of this church and this school to the school site and the church out on Brown Street. And so a great thanks for the folks that have been working on the different committees, the hours and hours and hours of time spent on that, and so that we can continue to grow our ministry here at St. Matthew's. And I think that's the other part that is really important to reground ourselves. It's pretty exciting when we see these buildings get built, but what's even more exciting is what those tools of these buildings can be for us as a congregation in the community, the ministry tools that these facilities will be for us. So with that, questions or comments?
I have a comment and a question. I heard some chuckling when you talked about the 7th and 8th graders. I taught 7th grade, and that is such an important thing for those kids to know that they are needed and important. I don't have any discipline problems because of that. I suggest getting them to help take down as well. But really, it is so important for kids that age to know that what they do and think and our values.
Yeah, Pat's comments were that, it might have been a little bit of a chuckle that, hey, we're going to have the 7th and 8th graders set up and do that work, but what a phenomenal service opportunity for them to be engaged in our worship service by the setup. It won't be a free-for-all by any means, right? They probably will ask us after a couple times, we don't need your help anymore, right? They'll take over and do that. It's a great service opportunity for them. Thank you. That is correct. The question was, what about the lease revenue from the LCCA? That is no longer our lease. That has been assumed by Bridge Church, and now they, beginning October 1st, they receive the lease payments, not us. Betty? The question was about the traffic flow. With all the construction activity going on, and there will be a traffic flow plan that we'll have to get used to, how to come into the parking lot and how to exit the parking lot, again, so that we're not all coming and going in a very, very random fashion. But yes, there is a traffic flow this. And I think that's worked out very well. I mean, I think the school, Principal Plitzelwhite, I think we've got a pretty good plan already on school flow. Here's how you come in and here's how you go out. And after a couple of, I haven't been out there to disrupt it yet, so I think people probably do well with that, right? Yeah, thank you. Dawn? What happens with sports in the gym? We have checked the schedules, and we do not have any scheduled sporting event conflicts in the gymnasium beginning from that first date that we will be worshiping out there until our planned occupancy is in the summer. How many parking spaces are being planned? I used to have that number off. The question was parking spaces, about 325 parking spaces, and I think on maybe one of the drawings outside, we put a lot of effort into adding parking spaces up front for those that might need closer access, whether it be not only handicap parking, but with some of our older members to have closer access in order to get in. We've also been talking about the possibility of having some ushers provide almost like a valet service. If you're comfortable with pulling up to the entrance and allowing one of our ushers to park your car for you and then get it for you afterwards. We've talked about doing that as well. But we think there's a pretty good number of upfront close parking spots to accommodate that parking. We will not use the 7th and 8th graders for that valet parking. That was going through some people's minds, I think. The question was compared to how our parking is here, the number of parking spaces closer, I believe is very comparable, especially with those closer parking spots. They're actually much closer than, if you're not here to get one of the first 4 right here, you might be back on the old Abendroth property over here, right? Pastor? Question was planned for funeral services while we are worshiping in the gym. Pastor?
I believe one of the comments was either we needed a fellow church from one of our other sister churches in the area. That was one of the plans discussed. Funeral homes sometimes allow us to be depending on the time of it, so.
Yeah, during that temporary time, whether it be other congregations in the area that we would be able to utilize space, possibly the funeral homes. I know that Paganoff just expanded their facilities there. Again, during that temporary, about a 6 or 8 month period of time, there might be a couple of instances where we need to do that. I believe weddings have already been accommodated on the schedule, and we know that. There were a couple of weddings that were scheduled through the winter months, and we'll be in good shape with that. After that, we'll know that there would have to be alternative facilities for those. Question was a bell and the bell tower. Yes, there will be. It'll be an actual sound system so it won't be a physical ringing of the bell, but it will be. The sound will come from that bell tower, and it will be prominent. That picture. Again, if you have an opportunity to drive out there, you're on Highway P, it's a very, very impressive structure for that tower. Not only for the bell tower part, but above that structure will be the cross. So I believe that you'd readily be able to see that cross from Highway 67 if you're traveling on 67 going north or south. So it will be very, very prominent presence out there, the focus of our ministry. Pastor? The cross is planned to be lighted at night as well. Lenten services and Maundy, Thursday, those are still being worked through on where and when and times of the Lenten services, because that's going to be right in that Again, we will have exited here at the end of February, so that is still being discussed on what our plan, our exact plans will be for the Lenten services. Pastor, go ahead. What? Yeah, we will, that's great. We will be holding the Monday, Thursday, and Good Friday services for sure out there. It's the midweek services that are still, what will be the logistics of doing that that's being worked out. Pat?
Why is that gap between decommissioning on the 29th and not starting rather than the 28th?
The question of having the decommissioning of this facility not go right up until the 28th. There are some things that we need to remove from here. We need to move the organ. We need to remove the pews. We did retain the pews. There might be a congregation in our synod that might be able to use the pews. So just some time between us leaving here and then the next morning getting set up and worshiping out on Brown Street. So.
You may mention the possibility of just finishing off those 4 classrooms. When would that decision be made? What would the process be to come to that decision?
The question was about those remaining 4 classrooms. When will that decision be made? Like I said, that is something that, and thank you for bringing that up, that is actually something we would love to hear from you this morning on what your thoughts are on that. Mark shared the rationale. You know, we want to be very cognizant of, you know, we set up a budget and we came to the congregation with a budget plan. But that feels like one of those that we definitely need your guidance on from a congregational standpoint. Pastor?
My thought was we're doing an $11.1 million project and we're about $250,000 to finish something off. It's not going to get cheaper if we wait for it. It would just make sense from my standpoint. Go ahead.
Thank you. Betty?
When we visited other congregations prior to the planning of the church, the 2 things that every church commented on is build more space, build more storage. I think the fact that we are already building the space and it's obvious there's use for it, it would be foolish not to finish it.
Betty's comments were that a number of the visits, and the committees did many, many visits of different congregations, and they warned us of 2 things, basically. Don't underbuild. If you're going to do it and you think you're going to need it, go ahead and do it, because it's not going to be cheaper, it's not going to be easier later. And then also, if you have storage needs, make sure you address those storage needs. We heard that from other congregations. In terms of a timing, we have been told by the construction company that if we have a decision in about the November, December timeframe, that would not affect their schedule at all. So if we as a congregation feel that's a direction that we would like to go, we do have a congregational meeting coming up at the end of November, the 29th, I believe it is. If we decided to take action on that, the construction company said they would have no problems at all meeting the schedule by doing that. So from a timing standpoint, that would be the time for us to take that up officially from a congregation standpoint. Bill? A couple of QCDs, we'd have that covered. That's coming from a financial guy, right?
Are we going to end up going to take any of that loan down for construction? Or are we all working just on our cash?
The question regarding the construction loan, at this point in time, we're using our cash first before we utilize the loan. Now, because of the timing of all of our commitments coming in, we may have to use some of that loan money, but then we would pay that down right away. Again, the intent would be, at least if all goes as it shows right now, that before that note were due, we would have it paid off is part. But we are looking at what's that overall financial, because we do still have the bond on the current school building. We'll have the bond on the new part of the school building. What makes most sense for us to pay off first? But we would be using our money first rather than having to pay any interest on any loans. Shar?
I would just point out that we've had $309,000 of unanticipated money come in that was not committed. It would seem like that would be a natural thing to maybe use that to finish those classrooms and to cover some of the overages that we had on some of those interior items.
If you could hear that, Shar's comments were, if we looked at the 309 overcommitments already, would that be funds that we could use for the classrooms and also the overages that we've already seen? And that does seem fairly logical from that standpoint.
I
The sound system that we are putting into the sanctuary area with the Bluetooth loop system, that will not be in the gymnasium for the short-term worship plans. Now, we are going to be doing, I think either Mark or Ralph had mentioned, we are going to be doing a pretty significant project out there to improve the sound. Because if you go in there now and you try to hold a service, concrete walls, I mean, sound's bouncing all over the place. So we are doing that right now. We don't have the ability to put all of that structure in place in the short term for in the gymnasium. Dwayne? The question was, could the school bond be increased by the $250,000? I'm not sure of the process on increasing that bond amount. I'm not sure it would be a favorable rate right now either if we did do that. I think those rates have nearly doubled since we first did that. It's something we can ask. If we decide that that is not something that we want to do with planned future gifts, that can be something that we can have a team look into. Can we increase that bond on the school by that amount, if that makes sense for us to do? We can check that out. Bill?
What about letting the congregation know, please contact the church office or send a message to our email system if you're willing to commit more to that $250 to finish those classrooms before the November congregational meeting. We'll see what kind of interest people have in committing, some idea of dollar amount and that they would be willing to put more in, and maybe the decision is pretty easy.
Suggestion was maybe a special notification or a special drive, if you will, to cover that extra $250,000. So kind of an extra commitment to finish that part off. That recommendation would be that we would send that out to the congregation. So good idea for us to do. Any other questions? Andy?
You mentioned the pews not going to stay in this church. What other things would we, like there's the chapel, there are plans for, I assume, new pulpit, lectern, etc. in the main sanctuary, but does the pulpit stay, the lectern, the altar, the cross, etc., etc.?
We did a walkthrough with the pastors and a couple of the different boards. In terms of the items, the lectern, the communion table here, the baptismal font, those are not only coming with us for short term, but I believe there's some thoughts that would be integrated as a part of the chapel. So that would be something that we would bring with us. Some of the communion elements, we may be getting some new, but if not, if we do, we would be reusing those in the chapel area. And some other details, like even the stained glass in these two front doors. There's some tradition to those, not the rest of the windows, but bringing those along with us, so that we are bringing some of our physical history along with us from the sanctuary standpoint. Then there's some other items, like some of the round tables from downstairs, some of the chairs that we're bringing along with us so that we can use temporarily in the commons area. But that would be about it. A few people have asked about some of the lights and some of those items. Bridge Church has let us know that before they do any demolition or remodeling in here, we would have the option. If somebody said, hey, I'd like to donate and have one of those in my barn for the youth group parties or something like that, that might be something that could be accommodated as well. So, yeah, I think Dan asked for one too. So that's the plan right now. And again, it might be something where there's not a huge market for, like on Marketplace or something, for pews, but there are some channels for that. So we are exploring, is there somebody that could use the pews? There is also repurposing or recycling of pews. There's companies that do that. So we might be able to sell some of those to them. Or again, ideally, if there was a congregation in our synod that was either starting up or maybe had some destruction happen to their church, it'd be kind of neat to have these pews be repurposed in another congregation in our synod.
Will there be any pews in the new church?
In the new church, the question of the pews, we will be having pews. So the picture that was shown up here earlier was just for the temporary use in the gymnasium. The new sanctuary, when it's completed, will be pews. Predominantly pews, and there will be some areas on the sides that will be more of chairs, but when they're put together, they'll almost look like they're pews when they're put together. But the primary seating in the new sanctuary will be pews. Pardon me? And the chapel will be chairs in the chapel area in the new building.
On the picture, it looked like that new classroom thing that's just about finished now has a separate entrance. That's going to be connected to the school, is it not?
Yes, the question was, when you look closely at the photos where the new classrooms are, it looked like there was just like a roof, like a walkway roof over top of it. It will be adjoined, physically joined to the existing classrooms through some double doors. I think that's probably it. One more question if we had one. All right, again, thank you, everybody, and again, we'll have some topics for our November 29th meeting as well.